If you're a Murder Drones fan, or know of Murder Drones in any way and are involved in the community, even if that just means watching a couple of videos, you definitely have heard or at least seen a punchline or joke about episode 5 being the worst episode. I mean, if you even look at the past video I made last week, you can definitely pick out a couple jokes I even made about episode 5. Now, I've always been aware of people who liked episode 5. I mean, a lot of them are even my colleagues or fellow YouTubers of Murder Drones, but when I were to ask any of you guys, my viewers, some of you came back saying that you were confused on why episode 5 got a lot of hate, so here is my video explaining why episode 5 is the worst episode in the entirety of the Murder Drones series. I'm gonna break up this video into separate bits, explaining the different aspects of episode 5 that truly make it the worst episode, starting off with the humor. Now first, we have to understand the whole hype around episode 5. For one thing, it was going to be a flashback episode, at least that's what we saw in the teaser, and it was going to explain the Absolute Solver, the overlooming antagonist of the entire series. It was going to explore the past of the Murder Drones, and was overall expected to be a very serious episode, or at least that was what we thought. Now, episodes before episode 5 have gotten a little bit of complaints up until now about how some jokes or little gags in the show have undermined a few scenes, made them a little bit less serious, or broke some tension, but nothing too serious. Now, episode 5 was expected to be a very, very serious episode. I mean, we are exploring the dark past of the Absolute Solver and the disassembly drones. However, if you were to watch the episode, you could see plenty of jokes or little gags that are sprinkled throughout the entire episode. Now, this isn't necessarily a horrible thing, it's not the best thing by any means, if only the jokes were actually funny. Now, obviously humor is subjective, I am a hard believer of that. I mean, half the time whenever a joke is made on screen, I am deadpan, absolute no reaction, since it's just really not how I work. But a lot of jokes, such as Crow Uzi pooping out an egg or Frumple Bucket as an entirety, I have failed to see one person, one singular person across the entire internet laugh at it. Now, I'm not saying that if you did laugh at it that you are in any ways a bad person or something of the sort. I mean, you can laugh at whatever you want, I could not care less. But overall, the jokes in this episode not only undermine the seriousness of it, but also aren't even funny to the mass majority of people, at least the people I've interacted with.
Crikey, what a bounding hump to ruffle!
Now, if episode 5 just had a few bad jokes here and there, it wouldn't be that bad. I mean, there's time to build up the atmosphere of the actual episode, except for the fact that there are consistently jokes made throughout the entire episode, which makes it basically impossible for the atmosphere or tension to be built back up, making the entire episode, at least for me and for plenty of other people, feel like an absolute joke and not serious whatsoever. Now, if humor was the only bad thing about this episode, then I wouldn't be making this video, since episode 5 wouldn't be the worst episode. However, humor isn't its only flaw, and there are plenty of more I will talk about. Coming up next, something a little bit small, but the time skip between episode 4 and 5. Now, episode 4 left off on a very mysterious tone about the past of the disassembly drones, or N, as he's the one who found the tape talking about quote-unquote zombie drones. Now, when you jump into episode 5, we are immediately thrust into the flashbacks without given any information on where the main cast is currently, and we don't even find out what the main cast is doing or how we're even seeing these memories until basically halfway through the actual episode. In between episodes 4 and 5, we are given no break. We are given no information about what's going on or why they decided to dive into the memories of the disassembly drones or anything else. We are given no break or intermission. Now, there are plenty of problems with episode 5 I will not mention in this video, as it would make this video way too long and I don't feel like editing a very long video right now, but I'm going to talk about one more flaw, which is its biggest flaw: how it handled the Absolute Solvers and the disassembly drone's backstory as a whole. Now, in episode 5, we are given information about the Absolute Solver and how it came to be. From what I can gather, it was a zombie drone, or a drone that booted up after being quote-unquote improperly disposed of, aka just being destroyed, probably out of anger, and was salvaged by Tessa and then somewhat rebuilt, fixed, and then put into the manor with a bunch of other drones and humans. Here is where the Absolute Solver, or Sin, which is probably the drone's previous name or the name that Tessa gave to it, would start to see how humans would treat drones, that being very negatively and very abusingly. Now, whether or not this behavior that the Absolute Solver observed caused it to, go all killing all of humanity and blowing up Earth, or if it was some pre-programmed thing or whatever, nevertheless, it massacred the Gala, which consisted of Tessa's family and the Frumplebucket family, and then probably went on to terrorize Earth and all the other humans and then kill all of them. Now, what about the disassembly drones? What were their backstory? Did Sin create them? Well, yes. Anything else? No, we didn't get anything else, or at least everything else was just implied. It was implied that Sin was experimenting with the disassembly drones and the worker drones. Oh my god, that sounds so wrong. It is implied that N, V, and J were all experimented on and then turned into disassembly drones. And obviously when N finds this out, he just laughs it off as a joke, because in the name of humor, that completely undermines the entire episode. The backstory for the Absolute Solver, and especially the disassembly drones that was given to us in episode 5, was completely lackluster. It was not given to us in a very good way, and also the amount we were given was absolutely horrible. I'm pretty sure we got more disassembly drones lore in episode 7, which is completely crazy to me. Overall, this episode is a massive disappointment of the entire Murder Drones series, and I criticize the series a lot, but this is probably one of the things I am the most sure about of the entirety of my channel. Episode 5 is the worst episode of Murder Drones, and was probably one of the worst episodes in indie animated shows I have ever seen. It sits right at the bottom of my list, right next to Unhappy Campers and Hell of a Boss. But then again, that is just my opinion, and I don't represent the entirety of the Murder Drones fandom, so let's go over the reasons why everyone, or at least the majority of the fandom and Murder Drones fans in general, think it's the worst episode. First, let's go off the numbers. As of recording this video, episode 5 has a little bit less than 700,000 likes, which is the lowest like count of the entire show. It also has a lower view count of the entire show, including the finale, which is the most recent episode. This probably means that as people rewatch the series, they purposely skip episode 5, since I doubt that people on their first watch through would purposely skip a random episode. Now those are the numbers, but what about the people? I have gotten 2 responses from 2 YouTubers, one of them being a small YouTuber, Yagster, and another one being my other friend, Grumpy Ghost, the creator of British Drones, if you know them. I asked him, hey, so for a video I need your answer to this question if you don't mind. What is the main reason you dislike episode 5 of Murder Drones? He responds with, oh man, that's tough. I got plenty of reasons on why, and a decent chunk of the fandom absolutely loathe and despise episode 5, but I think the main reason why is because of the comedy. It's one thing to have a funny joke or two interrupt a scene and disturb/ruin all the tension. It's also another thing for an episode to just not legit take itself seriously. Episode 5 is a borderline sitcom with the amount of jokes in the episode. Doing the math, there is about a single joke every 2 minutes. Whilst humor is the textbook definition of subjective, some stuff just isn't funny. Crozy laying an egg, James forking a worker drone to death, Frumplebucket and saying it's gone in the basement, and the cliffhanger all range from somewhat annoying to downright horrible writing. For crying out loud, they literally treat death as a joke. It's awful, and the only saving grace for the humor in episode 5 is the KYSJ drawing and most of Sin's dialogue. That's about it. When an episode can't be bothered to take itself seriously, there is quite literally zero reason for the viewer to care. Had Home taken itself seriously and severely limited its humor, and actually nailed the tone and theme that the teaser trailer showed us, it would undeniably be one of the most universally loved episodes. Instead, we got a Crozy-infested Frumplebucket having complete waste of an episode because the execution was riddled with bad jokes. I rest my case. Honestly, I can't find one thing in this response that I disagree with. I completely agree with everything he said. Now let's move on to Grumpy. Now when I asked her to give me her thoughts about episode 5, she said if I was gonna limit how much she was going to give me, and boy, I should have said yes. No, there is no way I'm going to read all of this out, as this would double the length of this video, and I also don't feel like doing that or editing it, so I'll put it all on screen so you can read it yourself. However, I will give you a short synopsis. Basically, she was just saying the exact same things I was saying, along with everything Yagster said. Episode 5 is a complete mess humor-wise, and how it held its tension, how it handled literally everything. With all of this evidence, it is very clear that episode 5 is the worst episode of Murder Drones, by the numbers, in my own opinion, and the opinion of even other YouTubers. It is poorly written, it handles its humor horribly, and its tension is non-existent. And it is truly a shame that this episode is so bad, as it had so much potential and just failed to deliver. Like Yagster said, this episode had the potential to be universally loved in the fandom. It could have been the episode 3 of the fandom, yet all we got was a big mess of bad humor, poorly timed jokes, zero tension, and worst of all, completely surprised us in the worst way possible.